If you have an aversion to stories where people's kids get eaten, maybe don't read this book. Today we're going to talk about the book Invasive Species by Ellery Adams. This book takes place in the town of Cold Harbor, and there is a woman who lives there named Mrs. Smith. And Mrs. Smith currently is kind of a recluse. She doesn't really leave her big giant home, which is known as Eel's Nest. And her house is kind of creepy and weird, and it has these like octopus stained glass windows up in the top floor that you can't really even see them unless it's storming outside, and the octopuses have 9 tentacles, and that may symbolize something or other. And so every 100 years, Mrs. Smith renews herself so that she regains her youth and her beauty. And how does she do that? Well, obviously I said something about eating children. Well, that's how she does it. She has to eat 9 human man children. They can be girls or boys, and they have to be under a certain age. So our story goes. And of course, the adults of the town never believed that anything like paranormal or weird could possibly be happening. So, you start to get to know some of the characters in the story, and it starts out with this one woman who is the mom to kids, Jill, JJ, and then their youngest. Jill and JJ might be in that age range of children that Mrs. Smith likes to eat, because Jill, I believe she's 12, and then JJ's a little bit older. And so, they live by the water, and they do things such as they're on the swim team, and they do a sailing regatta, and this, that, and the other. So, they're in the water, they're near the water, they're on there. And this Mrs. Smith, as you come into the story, she doesn't leave her house, but she leaves at night. And at night she goes to her children out in the sea. And, she goes in through her little boathouse that she has. And then, she turns into her real self, or her other self, which is like this weird mother of eels creature type thing. And she's always hungry. The hunger never goes away. But, she has to be careful, because if people do start to suspect anything, then, they might try to kill her or drive her out or this, that, and the other. But, a lot of people in the current times don't believe in monsters. What starts to draw attention to Mrs. Smith is there's this group of women that hang out. Jill's mom and some other moms. This one mom, Elaine, who has a son named Charles, and he's about to have his like big bar mitzvah. I think you turn 13 when you have a bar mitzvah. She's like super rich, and so she's been like planning that. And then there's this other woman who is married to this guy, Don. I think her name is Beth Pulaski. And Don, her husband, ends up selling a car to Mrs. Smith. And after that interaction, he's been really weird with Beth, because him and Beth were like, I don't know, I want to almost call them like sex fiends who are always just humping each other stupid, because that's what all Beth talks about in the beginning of the story about, dressing in skimpy outfits and this, that, and the other. And their whole relationship is sex until Don sells a car to Mrs. Smith. And then Beth starts to get weird, like he won't touch me anymore. He is really short with me. He's almost tending like to anger. And so she doesn't know what's going on. And, she starts to have suspicions. And so they start to like worry about her that way. Like she's going to come for people's husbands and whatnot, but they don't see any of the supernatural elements to it at all. So Mrs. Smith, her renewal, as I said, is about to start. She goes out in a storm and is able to eat like two kids. So this starts her renewal process, where she starts to look like almost human again, because she has to spend her time in these like saltwater hot tubs and this, that, and the other. And she hasn't really been able to not stay in those until now that she's, eating the kids again. And so she can start to go out into society. She owns a lot of different parts of the town and stuff. And so the woman whose son Charles, who she wants to have this like really elaborate, expensive bar mitzvah from, she wanted to have fireworks like over the harbor. And Mrs. Smith said no. She finds this out through like the boat club or wherever she was going to have this big bar mitzvah on like a yacht or something like that. And so she gets all pissed off. So she writes a letter to Mrs. Smith and this, that, and the other. So, like slowly the attention is drawing on this woman, Mrs. Smith. Eventually, I think she gets a letter back or a phone call. I can't remember. And Mrs. Smith is like, okay, well, I want Charles and then the next door neighbor kids, Jill and JJ, to all come work on my yard because everyone's like, her yard's overgrown and it's weird. And there's all these vines that are like invasive species and whatnot in the woods. And her house is all like creepy and overgrown and there's like no creatures in it and whatnot. And so she's like, oh, because the lady also complained about her yard too. And they were trying to get like I don't know, the community people to like fine her for her overgrown yard and this, that, and the other. And so she's like, I wants the kids to come like work on her yard. And she says she'll pay him. And so there's that. And then she also wants an invite now to the bar mitzvah in order for the lady to have her fireworks. So the lady's like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. Then we'll finally get to see who this Mrs. Smith is. It's like, you guys, she wants to eat your kids. You shouldn't invite her to anything. And the kids are really worried about this too. And so the only adult that actually believes that something weird is going on, because the kids get really weird vibes and they feel like that lady's watching them or the house is watching them. And the only person that believes them is this, she's like a nanny / housekeeper named Una. And she comes from Iceland. And when she was younger, her father was a fisherman and she was on the boat with him with her sister, and her sister was taken and she saw this weird creature with these dark eyes and these tentacles pull her sister down and take her. She gets this weird vibe because as they start looking into the history of this Eel's Nest house and kind of digging into the history of Cold Harbor, when weird stuff starts to happen, Una sees this picture of this woman on the porch and it looks like the eyes that she remembered, but it couldn't possibly be, right? The eyes that she remembered pulling her sister down under the water. And so you have Una who believes, and then she starts to talk to Jill and this other kid, Charles. And so what happens is they have this regatta and all the kids are like involved in it. And when it's happening, Jill ends up partnered with this other girl who kind of is just bad at sailing. And so they're kind of falling behind, but behind them is Charles in another boat, and then there's another boat, and I don't know the kids that were in the other boat, but their boats got like tangled together. And then while Jill's watching, she sees this dark mass that is moving towards the two boats, and she's like, what the F? And it looks like she saw something, but she wasn't really sure what she saw. And then one of the boats is pushed away into like the fog, and then the other boat is like over here, and then the one boat capsizes and then the kids disappear, but you have Charles on the other boat screaming, and he saw a finger float up and he saw into the water and he saw a monster, but like he won't tell his parents this. So that happens. He saw some stuff. Jill knows something, and then Una takes care of both of their households, and they both end up talking to her about it because they're just comfortable with her. And some people, you get that vibe that you can actually trust them and talk to them and they won't think you're absolute bat crazy. So Jill ends up talking to Una, and then eventually like Una talks to Charles and she's like, I believe you. And then Jill and Charles start talking about what's going on, trying to like figure out, going to the library, getting different books about what kind of monster this could possibly be and like how they're supposed to stop it. And so between Una, Charles, and Jill, they're going to try to stop this Mrs. Smith lady. What they think is going to happen is it's all going to happen during Charles's bar mitzvah on a yacht because they're going to be in her territory in the water. I wasn't even sure if it was quite horror when I picked it up. Like, the description did not emphasize at all that it would be as strange and gory. Like when it says human sacrifices, I don't know if I would say they're sacrifices, at least in this current time zone, because Mrs. Smith hunts for her prey. Like, these are not provided to her. So is it a sacrifice if you're just choosing them and eating them? No, I don't think it is. So, but I guess it still counts and it renews her and whatnot. So, will they be able to stop her? Will more people die? Because she was able to eat like 4 kids. So, she's on her way to renewal. It's gruesome, it's gory, it's a great page turner. I liked the characters. I hated some of the characters. I just thought the parents were so dumb. They were so frustrating. The things they were like focused on, and how like it's like, I think most family dynamics, a lot of times, like most families don't think monsters are real. At one point, Jill asked her mom, she's like, if I told you I thought that like a monster was real, would you believe me? And she's pretty much like, no. And then her mom also kind of sucks too, because she's always like implying that Jill is fat, which is because she's also focused on herself and her weight and this, that, and the other, and probably came down from her mother telling her the same thing. And it's like, man, leave your kid alone. Let her enjoy being like a kid. She's 12. Let her eat a cupcake every once in a while and not shame her and whatnot. So you have like some of that. And so I was like really annoyed with the parents. And then, you just have Elaine, the stubborn lady who wants to spend a boatload of money on her kid's bar mitzvah, and like Charles doesn't really have very many friends, and he is just kind of going through the motions. He's an awkward kid, but at least he kind of has a friendship towards the end with like Jill, because they bond over like, hey, we're trying to stop this horrible monster. I thought it was a fun read. I love underwater / horror by the sea. It just had so many great elements to it. It's a fun summer horror read. I mean, you could read it any time of year, but I like to read some of those like beachy, watery horror reads so I can terrify myself not to want to go in the water ever when I'm near the water. I still go in though, but I don't live by the ocean, so more so just lakes. But you know, there's lake monsters too. I've never seen any yet. Hopefully not. Hopefully I don't. But who knows? Who knows what's out there? I don't know what's out there under the water. But yeah, if you like underwater horror, if you like page turners, if you're looking for a fun summer horror read, Invasive Species by Ellery Adams, I thought it was pretty great. So if any of that sounds good to you, definitely check it out. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.